Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello, and welcome to episode 165 of Cognitive. It's so nice to have you along with me. I hear that many of you are wading through the snow. I'm very impressed. And I'm very grateful it's not me. I hate to admit it, while I find snow magical, I could probably spend the rest of my life without ever setting foot in it again and being happy. But I do think the one thing we all have in common is we're in the bleak midwinter, as the old Christmas carol says. But I think also we're in the quiet time, where the year is new and we have all this energy for starting over, which is good because many of us need to start shoveling snow instead. And things are just kind of quiet right now. So I could not help it. I found a meme of Doctor Strange casting a spell, and someone had superimposed on it all the equivalences of volume for baking in American baking, like how many ounces are in a cup, how many cups are in a pint, that sort of thing. And I couldn't resist it. So if you needed a good chart of all the equivalences, there it is at the top of the show notes with the support of Benedict Cumberbatch. In the meantime, your comments are always welcome here in the bleak midwinter, but also all the rest of the year. You can leave your comments on our group on Ravelry, or you can leave them in the blog at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com. And let's see what else I have to say to you. Warm thanks. Well, to all my listeners, Happy New Year. I don't think I say enough how much I appreciate that you listen. It's very funny. I was meeting with one of the knitting groups down in the Santa Clarita region, and this one woman got a little bit high-handed about, well, if you want me to attend your stuff and listen to your podcast, here's what you have to do. And it did remind me that we have really changed the model a lot since I started podcasting. And a lot of people are using podcasts to get spare income, and I don't blame them. I mean, some people got it right from the beginning and started taking sponsorships and stuff. And there's a great use to that, because I think of the Knitmore girls where they really identify good sponsors. You know, people who are, and they try to find people who are selling ethically and working ethically and all that. So having a sponsored podcast or raising money with your podcast is A-okay as long as you keep a reasonable balance of commercial versus podcast content. And they can put you onto some very, very good vendors. But I'm not doing that. I have always felt that this is a small thing, a small project I do on the side. And I've also always felt that I do it for my own emotional good health. It's a way of giving back to the knitting community. Originally, now it's knitting, weaving, spinning, dyeing, crocheting, everybody, all of you, felting, you know, all of you guys. And I've tried all those things. And it's kind of a nice way to give back. So, you know, no nasty intent towards anybody who's using this as another income stream. Because I'm certainly looking at ways to do that with other parts of my life, not with this podcast. The other thing I used to say back in the days when I worked in the prison, that I record to keep my own sanity on those long drives every week. And it's still true that I would record if nobody listened to me. I would just still put it out there because it just makes me feel good to do it. At the same time, I got a lot of interesting messages this week, including there's a new one on the CFR 10 thread. And the person is saying, I couldn't come to 23 and I really want to come this year, but I don't think I'm going to make it. And I was sort of moved by that because I said to myself, she really takes this personally. Like, she really gets that I want the contact with you folks. I really love the contact. And I was so humbled by the fact that this person is writing in and explaining why she can't be there. I was so moved by that. I think that's the best aspect of the Cognitive Podcast, is there's a real sense for me of personal contact there over the years. And so I'm very, very grateful to all of you for that. And in the meantime, if you want to toss a few bucks at me every now and then in the coffee account, that's so kind of you. But I really don't want to go that direction. I'm realizing as I sit here recording on a very quiet day in the bleak midwinter, and of course my bleak midwinter, it's going to 61 degrees here today, and it's beautiful and sunny, and I'm looking out this fabulous view of the dark mountains to the south of me, and I'm so happy and so content. And so thank you all for keeping it personal. Thank you all for the warmth and the kindness you bring. And meanwhile, I think it's Karen RS. Good luck with that snow shovel. And, Sal Pal, enjoy the soup. And it's being able to say things like that in response to your messages on the blogs, the feeling that I know these people without always having had the privilege to hug them. Thank you so much for that. So there's my warm thanks. Meanwhile, since I mentioned CFR 10, I want you to know that right under the warm thanks in the show notes is the link to the information so far on CFR 10. We're kind of hibernating quietly. A few comments. Somebody said, well, put me on your emailing list. There isn't one. And I feel a little cold-blooded saying this. I'm a full-time psychologist, as y'all know. I don't have the time to do CFR that hard. And that's also one reason why CFR is always nonprofit. I don't make money off you, except you pay for my hotel room. Because I'm going to put this much work into it, I think you guys should probably pay for my hotel room. But, thank you. I mean, if we have 50 people, you're all paying $3. Thank you. $4 now, I think. $4 something. $3.50. I really do appreciate that. It's my great weekend every year, of course. But no, it is a nonprofit, and it's a nonprofit because I am not working it. I'm not running an email list. It's going to take me a few hours, to put it mildly, probably like 20 or 30 hours to do the goodie bags. It takes a little more time to keep reading and keeping up and updating the threads and all that. So I think it's only fair play that I don't make money off it, but at the same time, you have to pursue it. I'm not coming after you. It's only for 50 people. The day I start trying to make money off it, you'll know, because it'll be 200 people and it'll be in some major convention center. Although I have to tell you, it has occurred to me that doing it down in Anaheim near Disney, oh my gosh, ... But no, I don't want to move it even further south. I'll lose my Northern Californians. I'm already making them drive 6 hours, bless them. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, you're probably wondering by this point, what's on your hooks and needles, Gemma? Funny you should ask. It's true. I got slammed by startitis this week. It's my fault because I talked about vestuary last week. So the good news is now I have a routine every night. And this I owe to COVID. Yes, COVID. I can't believe I owe something to COVID. But during COVID, since I couldn't get out of my chair, I sat in my lovely green rocking chair that my husband gave me in the Christmas of 22, some of you will remember, and I made my own little nook in the bedroom, in the master suite. Well, this has been good for me in so many ways. Now every night it's become a habit to retreat to that nook and to work on various projects. And I'm happy to say I did finish the Evolution 23 socks. Our own beloved Stashy Mama Ann said to me, what, did you do these in a week or something? Well, no, but yes, that these are the project I work on while I was sitting through all the lectures last December at the Evolution of Psychotherapy. So, of course, they really went fast, although you may remember I was only able to do the top halves of them because I didn't have waste yarn with me, and please don't send me more solutions on how I could have fixed that. I heard you. But I had a lot of fun just doing 2 top halves. It was an interesting way to do a pair of socks and then to come home and book through the feet. So the Evolution 23 socks are done. Very happy with them. I did not realize it when I bought the yarn, but those are in the colors of my alma mater, the University of Pennsylvania. Go Quakers. Go Quakers. I've always thought when you're at a football game and you're screaming, go Quakers, it just sounds so ridiculous. Like, play that football, Quakers! Kick their butts! Oh, excuse me. Gently overthrow them, Quakers, But anyway, those are the Quakers colors, so I love them for that too. Meanwhile, in progress, you know what this means, right? Now the stash toss is at 0 skeins in, but 1 skein out. I don't count the leftovers that will go into my scrap yarn pile for socks. And when I do the stash toss and I make a pair of scrappy socks, horrifying but true, I don't count them as a skein of yarn because it's all leftovers. So that's technically nothing out of the stash, although now I'm using up old Regia for the feet. So who knows how I will look at that. But right now, the stash toss, 0 skeins in versus 1 skein out. And I have to tell you, I was at Joann Fabrics yesterday. They have a Boffo yarn sale going on, and I bought nothing. Although I should have thought about it because I do want to make that crocheted cat sweater that I showed you last week. Meanwhile, did I mention I got startitis? Yes. So I was going through the deep stash, looking for old yarns to add to the Romule and making sure I had all the colors I wanted and all the hand I wanted. Some of the fibers I originally picked are rather harsh and would be better used as rugs. So that led me through, and I did find some very nice stuff. In the meantime, I was looking at my sock yarns, and I decided to go for the deepest stash dive I could. Now, I started 1 skein. I bought this in, I want to say this is 2010. And I was in Arizona. I was in Phoenix at a hypnotherapy week training in the summer. And I wandered over to Mesa, Arizona. And I bought a skein that to me looked like the colors of Sedona, Arizona. And there it is. It's Yawool. And it is a sock yarn, although it's a very, very light sock yarn. It's right on the edge of being lace weight. So I started that. And you can see a picture of the whole skein next to the beginnings of the ribbing of the top of one sock. So I'm doing a lot of ribbing there. And so I'm carrying that everywhere just to get through the ribbing. Because ribbing, I don't know, it's always this thing. I don't mind doing ribbing, particularly since I knit Continental for most of the knitting on my socks. But I always feel like ribbing is somehow this kind of burden. So there I am doing the ribbing on the Stash Dive 1 socks. I also found a skein. I believe this is the oldest skein I still have. It is Lime and Violet Sasquatch Sock. Those of you who remember Lime and Violet's podcast will realize how incredibly old it is. I believe it's from 2007. I think that's my single oldest skein, and I did wind it to make socks, but I fell in love with this Sedona colorway. So that's why this is Stash Dive 1, because Stash Dive 2 will be the Lime and Violet socks. And remember I said I got myself excited by talking about vestuary. So, I pulled out the yarn and I wound 1 skein and I thought, well, I'll just cast on. And I'll get some of the ribbing done, even though it's not February yet. And it was a nice break because while I'm working on the Romule sweater, I am holding 5 yarns together, 3 for one color and 2 for the other. So I'm knitting this like Fair Isle. And I've got 2 yarns in one hand and 3 in the other that I'm holding together to make it a bulky sweater. And it's very, very heavy. The sweater is very, very thick because it's basically double knitted with all this yarn running in the back behind the main stitches that you see on the front. And it's great, but it is a little hard on the hands because it's a heavy sweater. I'm working the sleeves and the body at the same time. We're about halfway down the body. I didn't put a picture in yet. I will see if I can find a picture and give you a good picture. So working on the vest for vestuary is like working on socks. It's so light compared to holding all the yarns for the Romule. So I didn't mean to do it, but I ended up knitting off like 5 or 6 rows of that. And on my vestuary vest, I always start with 4 inches of ribbing. I'm working bottom up, and I work completely in the round. Now, this is from Ann Budd's pattern in the Knitter's Handy Book of Patterns. She knits these in pieces. And this would make it very fast, I have to admit, but I don't like the back and forth. So I knit it in the round up to the armpits, and then I separate and I knit the back, and then I knit the front. And I just seam it at the shoulders, and then do the ribbing for the neck and the ribbing on the armholes. And I've got a formula I really like, because I think I've made 8 of these now. Or I think I'm on number 8. And I just gave a few of them away with my clothing donations to charity because I'm not wearing them anymore and their fit isn't as good. So this is one of those patterns. It's a classic pattern. And you do it over and over till you figure out how to really max it out for you. And I also have maxed it out for the yarn. I use Malabrigo Rios on these, and everything just works. The drape, the hand, everything. So there's the beginning of my Vestuary 24 sweater there. The color is called Blue Jeans. And meanwhile, I'll see if I can get a picture of the Romeo in, but that's going very well. I'm down to the elbows. I realized last night that I'm at the elbows on the sleeves, so I have to start decreasing gradually or commit to bell sleeves. And while bell sleeves look great on a lighter weight sweater, on a heavy sweater like this, they'd probably be much easier to do than the decreases. But when you're wearing a heavy sweater, it's cold out. You probably want the sleeves to close around your wrist. That's me. You know, your mileage may vary. Okay, meanwhile, the 4th CFR 23 sock yarn cowl, I'm plugging along. I'm very close to finished on it. I've probably got like another inch of width. And I'm really delighted with this because I have really decreased my sock yarn scrap pile with these. And of course, I have 4 of these now, plus the 5th one that I did in silk with all my Vineyard silk hand spun from Be Myself. And I like these, and right now they're living in the basket by our front door where I throw hats and gloves and scarves and fingerless mitts so that when anybody goes outside in the cold, they have something to wear. And if these get lost, I don't worry about it. So these guys are joining that list. They're fabulously beautiful. They're all wildly varied in their colors, and it's just been sheer fun making them. Will there be a 5th? There may be. There may be, because these can go to charity really easily too. These are hostess gifts, you know, just you have a friend and you just throw them one of these every now and then. It's just a nice thing to have in your gift closet for things you can give to people, just like all those candles I just poured. Meanwhile, I continue to carry the list of the books I used for them, and I'm thinking of putting those books in yet another thread on the Ravelry group, because I'm really happy with this idea that we've got useful threads over on Ravelry, like the techniques thread and the great books I'm reading thread, and the places you can get supplies thread and all that sort of thing. I'm thinking about it, and I'm looking longingly at the Pennsylvania Dutch embroidery, wondering why I'm not finishing that, but even so. So we have 2 new projects this week, is what I'm saying, the Vestuary and the Stash Dive 1 socks. But meanwhile, I am plugging along on the incredibly heavyweight Romeo sweater and loving it. Dizzy Blondes, I am not spinning right now. And I finally gave myself a good excuse, which is I'm trying to empty my yarn out. If I spin, I'm adding to my yarn. I have to say, when I'm doing the Romeo sweaters, you feel like you're using up all this old hand spun, which I am. And it's a good way to review your hand spun. So I'm looking at some of these really harsher fibers that were gifted to me by people, and they're just very harsh to put against the skin. Now, they could make big, heavy sweaters for the outdoors, and that's what I originally thought they would make. But I'm thinking now of getting some of my acrylic leftovers, because I still do have some. I thought I'd gotten rid of it all, but I hadn't. And I'm thinking about doing the one rug pattern that worked great. You may remember I was crocheting rugs a while back, and I was using very heavy fluff that I knew would come out very coarse as yarn. So I've been looking at all those rugs I made. And I made one, a little small one, because I did it as a sample. And it's felted so that it's puckering up. And it's a little hard to use, and it's also a little bit tiny. But I keep it in the bathroom, and where nobody sees it, in the back stall of the bathroom in the master suite. And I love it, but it's not very practical. And then there was the long rug I made to go by the shower door that gets a lot of drips, or by the bathtub. This is my favorite. I made it from different people's fibers. So when it is felted a bit unevenly. Of course, I could just cut it into a perfect rectangle because it's felted now. It wouldn't hurt it. But I like it the way it is. But the rug that has worked out the best and that has held its shape the best is a rug I made where somebody gifted me camouflage acrylic. Now, I hate camouflage as a colorway for reasons I'm not going to go into because it's me on my political soapbox. But I didn't want to waste the yarn. I didn't know who to give it to in those days. So what I did was I knitted it in using roving against it. And I made a waffle sort of pattern with it. And the nice thing is it goes well as a rug. You don't notice that it's really camouflage colored because it's got the gray of the fiber mixed in. And it has felted. But it's nice because the acrylic has helped it to maintain its basic shape. So I'm thinking of getting my old acrylics out and fiber that is harsh, or these yarns that I hand spun that are harsh, and making more rugs. And now in that rug, I knitted it. But I think now I would crochet my rugs because I like to crochet, and these go really fast. And these are great to have around the house. Once you start using the fiber you've been gifted that you're not sure you want to spin, once you start using it this way, you just treat it like a super bulky or bulky yarn and crochet it into a rug. This works really, really well. And if you have fluff you bought or that was gifted to you that you really don't want to spin, this is a great way to use it up, and you'll always have use for these rugs. There's a million places around your house they can go. So that's me and Dizzy Blondes. I'm really not talking about spinning. I'm talking about using up the fluff that you've got somehow, and now you're looking at it and thinking that's a little bit too harsh. Moving right along. You can see the link in the show notes to my favorite resources. These are the things you can buy, including yarns from indie dyers, but also LYSs and other supplies. And you can see my whole list there. There's a link to the list that is actually in the show notes for the Cognitive Podcast on Ravelry. Or rather, I should say it's in the group, the Cognitive Podcast over on Ravelry. And there's also a link there for all the skills and techniques that I like. So how to make a folded neckline is the one that springs to mind. And with all that said, let's roll on to a strategy. Ooh, boy, I have been up against this one all week with my patients, and this is where I get a lot of my inspiration. And I want to talk today about perfectionism. And the strategy here is learn to own your mistakes. And when I say own, I not only mean telling other people, I'm sorry I made a mistake, but also in your head to realize that you're human and you have to make mistakes. There is no other way to be a human. And in a good world, you're learning from your mistakes. The reason I say this is perfectionism is the fate of anxious people who feel they've been judged too much, and maybe they have been, by the way. I'm not saying they're wrong. Particularly if you have very domineering parents or authoritarian parents, and they're very judgmental when you're young, that's where you're going to develop anxiety. You're just not good enough. And the compensation is perfectionism. And that's all wonderful, and we can talk about that from a psychodynamic point of view. It's very valuable with a patient, even though I'm a Cog-B therapist, not a psychodynamic therapist. It is valuable with a patient to have them recognize that they're acting this way, they're punishing themselves, and they're being perfectionistic because they don't feel safe in their family of origin, because they feel judged, okay? But I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, and that means I'm working right here and now. Like whatever happened with your family, that's a different thing. That's mindfulness, where we talk about how you make your peace with it. But in the here and now, if you are perfectionistic, probably it's because you're anxious, because you feel judged. And the upshot of that is it hurts your relationships with other people because you have a hard time admitting to your mistakes, and that means you have a hard time apologizing when you make them. It also means you're probably beating yourself up internally about how rotten you are and how lousy you are. So first, let's start with a little perspective. I've worked in maximum security in a prison, okay? I've seen evil, and it's real evil. I mean, there are some people and there aren't, but a lot of people I met there are just plain evil. They want to hurt you for the sake of hurting you. They're motivated by power, and they don't play by a normal rule book. They just want to hurt you, okay? Why am I telling you this? Because they are not you. You think you're so bad, oh, you did this horrible thing, you said this horrible thing. You're probably not even on the same radar as they are in my world. That you think you're terrible because you probably haven't met really bad, terrible, as I can say I have. And so, you have to start realizing, as long as you're living a life of goodwill, you want to do the right thing, you want to be good to people, as long as you're doing that, you don't want to hurt people. If you're doing that, then you're probably not evil, okay? You're probably not bad. You're probably not crazy. If you're listening to this podcast and you're working a job, including staying home with the kids and raising kids and all that, you're probably not evil, vicious, crazy, or whatever. You may occasionally do something very mean, and you want to stop that. But on the whole, you're probably judging yourself a little unrealistically there. But It doesn't change the fact if you hurt somebody, you should fix it. And if you hurt yourself, you should fix it. And you have to start by developing a certain mindfulness where you just realize you've made mistakes and it is your obligation to fix them. And when you fix them or when you compensate for them in some way, you're now allowed to move on. And the mistakes you've made are an instrument of learning. They're not supposed to be a whip to beat yourself with, as long as you somehow compensate or apologize. And this is where perfectionism really leads you astray. Because if you can't admit your own mistakes, you're not going to be able to apologize to people in an honest way. And so you get these half-witted apologies. I had one family member say, well, I've said I'm sorry for all the things I did wrong, and so that's it. And I remember looking at her and thinking, you've never apologized to me. And that's not a real apology. That's like a blanket statement. Well, I feel bad for the things I did, so you should feel apologized to. That's not the personal thing that the person you've harmed actually needs. Okay? So you're not going to be able to move on to fixing these problems in your relationships with others if you're not able to acknowledge that you've made individual mistakes and to apologize for them in an individual way. Now, here's what I'm not covering. The person who is blaming you for something you didn't do because they've got some weird problem of their own. I remember having a very mentally disturbed colleague who once said to me, I see how you're sneering at me and all your little expressions. And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, I don't actually do that to you. I actually have always thought okay of you. I've never been, I was really mystified. And then, later, that didn't go well with her. Her life went to hell in a handbasket. So, I'm not talking about the people who are just messed up and they're blaming you for their own mistakes. But I am talking about you have to acknowledge that you make mistakes. You have to acknowledge that you make them. They are personal against individuals. Because, a mistake that's not against another person really doesn't count that much. So I put the wrong type of gasoline in my car and it was knocking as I was driving down the road by myself. Nobody was harmed. I just realized I made a mistake. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you realize I said something to this person I love and it was harsh and I didn't mean it to be harsh, but I hurt them. So I'm going to take responsibility to apologize. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that to you. And then hopefully to talk about, I didn't really mean it that way, but I realize it came out that way. And so I own it. And I didn't want to do that to you. Can we work this out? That's being personal. That's, giving an honest apology, whatever. That's what I'm talking about. That if you're perfectionistic, that's extremely hard for you to do. So I'm going to say step one of managing your perfectionism is to realize you are going to make mistakes. And you can't just gloss over them. And sometimes you need distance from them, I'll grant you. If you and another person quarrel unexpectedly, and you didn't see it coming, and you weren't planning to make a problem, first, you're going to have to admit you make mistakes, but you also have to get yourself a little distance so that you get a relief, and then you can look back and say, what was my contribution to the problem? Even if it was accidental, you still have to own what you did wrong and go in and try to fix it. So, here in discussing perfectionism, the first step is to recognize you're not perfect. You're not going to be perfect. And really, it's our faults that make us lovable sometimes, although it's hard to get that perspective. That comes out of practicing mindfulness, I think. And you have to start by owning what you're doing wrong. You have to be honest with yourself. I did this thing and I shouldn't have done it. Even if I didn't mean to harm anybody, I still did it. I take responsibility. And then you can get to the next steps, which are how do I fix it, which involves apology and compensation. Okay, but what I'm really talking about this week is it's really okay to own your mistakes. The interesting thing is this is one of the high points of being a therapist and receiving therapy from a good therapist. I was talking to several people about this week. It just kept coming up because of Christmas. This families were together over the holidays, or they weren't together over the holidays, and everybody's raking over their old issues and pain, or they're raking over what went wrong during their holiday parties, and that's probably why this is coming up. But it was really interesting because when I started talking to my patients about it, I was just being kind. I just said, look, you made a mistake. It's okay. It's not unrepairable. It's not going to ruin the rest of your life, but you probably want to move to fix it as quickly as you can. And of course, the interesting thing was when I was being kind with them and empathic, they weren't coming back with, well, this other person made a mistake. They weren't doing that. They were owning their mistake. They're going, I know, I feel terrible, feel really bad. And then we could get to, well, the other person made a mistake too, but you can't do anything about that. That's for them to fix. But, we kept going at it from the perspective of, you're not evil, you're not horrible, you just made a mistake. And talking about, how do you think we could fix that? What would you have to do to fix that? And they tell you all their fears. What if I say I made a mistake and they don't acknowledge theirs, blah, blah, blah. And you work through that. And that's one of the strong things that can go on in therapy, where you learn how to take responsibility for your stuff and you don't try to dictate what the other person does. Because one of the things you find is when you start taking responsibility with other people of goodwill for the things you've done wrong, they become more open to taking responsibility for the mistakes they may have made. And they may not even know they made a mistake until they have the discussion with you, and then they realize, while you were making your mistake, I think I was making a mistake too. And they may realize it in the discussion with you, and that's really wonderful. You get this opening for things to go better. So that's really what I'm heading for, is if you're perfectionistic, you're this way for a reason. But now here in the real world, in real time, whatever your reason is, and I think I pretty much can take a good guess, but whatever your reason is, it's interfering now with your ability to have relationships. And so you have to start to fix that by owning that you're not perfect, you can't be perfect, and you're going to make mistakes. And when you do that, mistakes that you make with other people in your relationships are usually personally painful to both parties, and you're going to have to go after that in a more personal way. Just not a blanket, well, I made a mistake, but nobody's perfect kind of statement. You have to actually work at, how do I fix this? There you go. On to the fluffy books. Not much new except to say that there is a new season of Father Brown coming out on BritBox. They now have like 11 seasons of this, and as I've said previously, it used to be politically thoughtful and all that. Now it's pretty much fluff, and they keep going through cast members, and they revive each season by bringing back beloved cast members from the past, But nonetheless, it keeps coming back, and I guess as long as Mark Williams is willing to put on the cassock and the silly hat and ride the bike, it will keep coming back. So another year of Father Brown. And it has no redeeming qualities except it's fun. It's cozy British mystery until you're drowning in it, like Sister Boniface. No redeeming qualities, but I enjoy it. Something I really like is this crochet pattern that makes the rounds on the internet every so often. And the last time it came around, I had a hard time locating the pattern. And I'm trying to think if this was Yarnspirations that brought this back. It might have been. At any rate, this is the crochet cat paw chair sock pattern. These are little socks that you crochet. I would use acrylic. And you put them on the legs of your chairs, the wooden legs especially, if you have hardwood floors and you don't want them scratched. You can make these very cute little paws and put them on your chair legs. Now, kids, let's be realistic. If you pick up a chair, these things are going to fall off, But if you're rubbing chair legs across wooden floors, these are a good idea. Since a lot of my house has hardwood floors, I'm a big fan of these. But I never could find the pattern, and this time I tracked it down. I took a screenshot, and so it's in the show notes, the screenshot. I did not transcribe it. What I would tell you is click on that image and save it to your photos and then blow it up. But these things are adorable, and they actually make sense if you have hardwood floors. And you can see from the size of them, they're not going to take long. You're going to whip these babies out. I think the issue would be when you make the first one, you're going to struggle with getting it shaped and all that stuff. And I think once you do it once, you're going to really realize that these are easy, and you're kind of going to memorize the best way to do it to get the shape you want. And there you go. So those are the crochet cat paw chair socks. Have I made any? No, but I'm pretty much on top of it. I've just got so many patterns in front of me now that I'm finishing the Romule and coming up on Vestuary. But I know I'm heading towards these. So there's a picture of one on a chair leg, an action shot. And there is an image there that you can click and copy and then blow up to get the recipe. Is this in Ravelry? I actually didn't look, or I didn't find it. I don't remember which. But I know last year I saw these once and I was looking them up and couldn't find them. So there it is. Which takes us on to put a lid on it. No new recipes this week. Nothing really much going on in the kitchen. The beloved son and I today are probably going to bake one of the pumpkin spice earthquake cakes that make our winters even better. I'm hoping to do that this afternoon with them. And so maybe next week we'll do that. I've given you that recipe, though. You can go back through the show notes and find it. So let's move on to the tea tastings. I'm working my way through the Plum Deluxe Advent Calendar. And today's teas, I think we're at days 12 and 13. I should have put the names of these in the show notes so I could read it better. But, oh yes. So day 12 is Raspberry Rosemary Herbal. This is another really interesting flavor because of the rosemary. The rosemary makes it fragrant, particularly when you drink it. It doesn't have a strong scent, but it's got a really nice scent. My first idea when I looked at this mix of ingredients was the rosemary is just going to overwhelm everything. And what's really smart is they use it light-handedly. You get that fragrance that rosemary gives you at the back of your nose. And it also makes a nice tea. It's very fruity and delicious. This struck me as a nice winter tea. It's one of those things you take when you're in cold season. It feels like a tonic, is what I'm saying. I don't think they mean it to be, but it's a really nice tea, and it's just pleasantly different. Day 13 was one I've had before. This is the Good Morning Moringa Herbal. I've never quite known how to describe this stuff. I don't order it special from Plum Deluxe, but it comes across in their sample packages every so often, and I've kind of liked it. It has a very light fragrance. It's kind of citrusy, and it's really nice in the morning. It's a nice, quiet wake-up tea with a pleasant citrus flavor, particularly on a winter morning. So I have to say, this is the Good Morning Moringa Herbal, and I've quite liked it, and I recommend it. It's not one of my house teas, but it's always enjoyable as it comes by. Let's get on to the blather, shall we? I'm surprised I'm getting this much time out of this. I thought I had almost nothing to say. Well, first off, I had a reality check with pouring candles today because I was out actually looking at candle prices. And I looked at candles on sale at Kohl's department store because I was dropping off one of my boxes. And these are not soy. These are paraffin candles. And the cheapest you could get was $10. And there's no way that, they're making a huge profit on that. That's all I can say. Then I went over to Joann's, and they were selling their Christmas candles. And these are big 3-wick candles. These are probably like 12-ounce candles. And they're good, and they're in big glass containers. Now, I have to say, by the way, when I was at Kohl's, I dropped off one of my give-back boxes. They gave me a discount coupon, and I used that to buy a discounted candle in a floral scent. That was nice. And I'll keep that in the living room so we're not breathing it too much back in the bedrooms because it's paraffin. I went to Joann's, and they had leftover Christmas candles. First of all, the scents were awful. There was only one reasonable one, and that was a gingerbread spice. The other thing, it was hot cocoa and peppermint, and it just smelled chemical. It didn't smell like anything. I thought, I'd never burn that in my house. However, the candles at Joann's, the 3-wick candles, were $25 for paraffin candles. First thing I'm going to tell you is you can beat that by going to Frostbeard Studios, I believe, and you go to their discounted candles, and those are all soy candles. Much, much better quality, and you're not really polluting the house. But I have to say, looking at the candle prices just was like getting slapped in the face with a cold fish. I would never buy these candles if I didn't have an extreme discount. So, at Joann's, it was really great because I had a reward from buying fabric that I hadn't used. So it was spend $5, get $5 off, seriously. So I walked in and they had all the Christmas stuff was reduced by 80%. So these candles were $5 each, and I had $5 off. And I also bought wrapping paper. And are you ready for this? On the actual receipt, they told me that I had saved $45. You know how much I spent? $5. So this is called Shop Those Coupons Hard. And of course, I bought these, ironically, because I thought I can burn them in the more open spaces in the house and it'll give the house a nice scent and all that. But also, these are new containers for the next time I pour candles. Because yes, I now have a box, a big carton, in which I'm saving old containers for my next candle pour. But let me tell you right now, the first thing I learned this week was, whoa, you really want to start pouring your own candles. For comparison, if I had paid full price for those 3-wick candles at Joann's, and then I got the big candle from Kohl's, okay, the total price would have been $65 for 3 candles. Okay, and I looked online, I went to Amazon, and there are make-your-own candle kits with soy chips, $30. And you get 10 pounds of soy chips. Okay, out of 13 pounds, I got 36 candles. So do the math. With that 10 pounds of wax, paying, was it $30, I think? I can't remember if it was 30 or 40. I would be getting something like 25 candles. Please don't buy commercial candles unless you get them extreme discount. Please pour your own, and for heaven's sake, use beeswax or soy chips. And by the way, I'm burning the soy candles now. They burn so much more cleanly. It's really noticeable. The wax melts evenly, and when it doesn't melt, I'm just going to rescue it and use it on my next pour at the bottom of a mug or something. Meanwhile, the daily house projects, I have not been working much on the cutting the strips from the leftover fabrics, and yet I suddenly looked at my fabric pile and realized it has really reduced. Now, interesting thing, our own Amy Zula, who's out in Delaware now, but she used to live out here in Ventura, and she was Mimi's Needleworks. Amy is out in Delaware weaving, which is a fine thing to do out there because they got snow and it's cold. Got to do something in the winter. And she is weaving by using strips of rags that a friend gave her. I had never gone there, but it's true. If you strip down these extra fabrics to very small strips, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, these would weave on a loom as long as you're using fewer threads per inch to give the loom some room. And you wouldn't use this to warp. You could if you were really making it thin and had a loom that would handle a very coarse warp. But you know, you can warp your loom with a kind of pleasant yarn, like a black acrylic or something that you have left over. You could use that for your warp, and then you would use rags for the weft. Very, very thin strips. And this would make some really nice stuff. So thanks Sarah and Amy, because she kind of woke me up to, I'm stripping these down to make quilts, but these also can be stripped down for your loom if you're going to weft with them and use a heavier yarn for the warp. So it's food for thought. I don't think I'm going to follow that particular rabbit hole, but I'm grateful for Amy for showing me that. Meanwhile, I'm still working on getting rid of the boxes for givebackbox.com. I'm down to 1 box left, and I'm getting rid of that today because I'm hoping to go down to Santa Clarita for the Yarnopoly meetup. And I'm going to just go drop off my box, have a nice lunch, avoid Joann's, and go to Yarnopoly. And meanwhile, I've got 1 t-shirt left that I need to cut up for making a t-shirt quilt. And then I'm just going to hang out and wait for more t-shirts to manifest so that I can cut them apart. When I get enough, I will make a t-shirt quilt. I don't want to make a throw. I've got lots of t-shirt quilt throws around the house. So I think I'm heading for something bigger, like a twin-size bed quilt or something. And if we don't need it, it'll go to charity. It can't hurt. There's always shelters that will take this stuff. Meanwhile, the walkway is on stall because we need it to rain, because the ground is very hard and driving the pins in isn't working. What is working is I've got 3 strips down, and I think we've got room. I've got 1 more strip already, and I think I can probably add another 2. But I'm just doing this a little bit at a time. So what is going on with the walkway? We're walking on it, which is nice. It's very slowly getting pushed into the ground by the weight of us walking on it. It does make a big difference to have that path go wider. And I know I have a weekend coming up where I'm going to get out the clippers and clip back all the bushes and stuff along that concrete walkway. So there's some good stuff to do there, and I really should be doing it today because it's in the 60s, but I have too many other things on the schedule. I haven't been working on watercolors. I haven't worked on the garage camera, which is another thing I kind of want to do today if I get the time. The pup date, Captain and Queenie. Queenie had an ear infection when we took her in for her annual shots. We gave her antibiotics. She's not acting like she has one. Captain seems to have one now. She's yelping if you pet her right ear too hard. She needs her annual anyway, so she's going to go in and hopefully get that all taken care of. So we got a vet visit coming up. The hub state, well, the tree is down, as I've said, and so we're really kind of done with all the Christmas stuff. I need to get myself back on the track with Project G, with cleaning out the garage, which I've now realized, due to the heavy influx of boxes around here, is going to be a year-round project that never ends. However, one of the things I'm looking at is cutting up the cardboard and now laying it down on our plant beds to kill the weeds, to just cover them up so they don't get sunlight, and that will kill them. And seeing how many of our perennials that I planted last year are going to come back this spring. So the garden looks kind of awful right now, and I need to start thinking about how I want to address that. And I'm really not working on Project Transcribe, Project T, the Journals of Europe, because I just haven't found the time lately, because I'm just way into the knitting and stuff. And I haven't been doing too much in Project Cookbook, because I haven't really been messing with new recipes. Again, my time is a bit at a premium right now, because I'm just really focused on knitting, and why not? These are all useful things. On the calendar, today is Yarnopoly. I know it's a Sunday as I record this, the 14th of January, but they pushed it back a day, which was nice. I think Second Saturday Stitchers had their meetup yesterday. Basically, they're on the second weekends of the month, and they have groups on Facebook if you want to make contact with them. Also this weekend, the local library had its Sit and Stitch. So this is a busy weekend on our calendar if you're a knitter. CFR 10 will be at the Courtyard by Marriott in Valencia on September 28th, 2024. Please mark your calendars. And Romule, well, the upcoming Romule this year looks like it's going to be sometime between December 21st and January 1st, 24-25. Rolling on down, Minerva gets the last word. You can see Minerva is in our bathroom coffee and tea setup. And she's studying the hard-boiled eggs and a cup of tea that I'm making. And Minerva would like you to know that here in the bleak midwinter, which is really not so bleak, this is a good time to take care of yourself. And one of the ways I like to take care of myself is I like to have easy food and drink, let's be honest. One of the things I learned with keto was while you're adjusting to a low-carb diet, you're going to be hungry and you have to avoid hunger. Hunger is what makes you go off your diet. And so I like to make food ready and available. And so I believe I told you this when I started years ago. I always have hard-boiled eggs on hand. I always have cheese on hand. You have to make sure that when you get hungry, you can take care of it right away in a healthy and satisfying way. And I always have the tea with the all-natural keto kinds of sweeteners around. So there is Minerva, and she is studying that. Minerva is reflecting on the fact that our lives are very peaceful and calm. Since I got COVID and we kind of adjusted how our bathroom handles coffee and tea of all things, and I started taking the hot Epsom salt baths and having a lot of cups of tea and hard-boiled eggs, and Minerva, well, she got catnip. So I think Minerva's last word would be just take care of yourself, keep ready snacks on hand. Small comfort things mean a lot here in the bleak midwinter. On that happy note, I'm going to remind everybody, get all your shots and all your boosters and all that sort of thing. Oh, I just saw a study on Medscape. They're saying the shingles vaccines are good for 4 years. I'm waiting to see how that one develops. I also am looking to get an RSV shot, but I'm going to see my doc in 2 weeks. We'll see if she'll get me one. And get all those things. Don't have a miserable winter. Don't get flu. Flu is going around here in Southern California, north of LA. Flu's going around, COVID's going around. You know, don't do it. Please get any vaccines you can. That'll help you. Don't suffer. And, you know, the shingles shots, yes, I got them about a year ago or 2 years ago now. And, yeah, the first one was miserable. But you know what? Meet somebody who's had shingles and you'll know why. The important thing is, though, when you're doing this, you're not only doing it for you, you're doing it for your community. I feel kind of ungood about, I may have been walking around evolution spreading COVID. I feel kind of terrible about that. And it's, you know, I got it, so I paid my price. But at the same time, you don't want to do that. I mean, it's not just about you getting flu. It's about you not infecting others. So remember, we are a community. And when we think like a community, we help and support each other. And that in turn comes back to us individually. So, you know, everybody, please stay safe. Take care of each other. and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.